Security, get that trash out of my sight. Now. The command was not spoken. It was spat. A shard of venom that sliced through the symphony of champagne flutes and polite laughter, shattering the fragile elegance of the evening. Conversations evaporated mid-syllable. A young waiter, balancing a silver tray of crystalline glasses, froze in place, his posture a sculpture of pure panic. Above, the grand nebula chandeliers of the Apex Tower's inaugural gala pulsed with a soft, golden light. But in the sudden, suffocating silence, they felt less like stars and more like interrogations lamps, exposing every raw nerve in the room. The voice belonged to Isabella Thorne, a woman poured into a dress the color of fresh blood. The crimson silk was an act of aggression, short, sharp, and engineered to command the eye. It clung to her frame like a second, more honest skin, radiating a brutal confidence born not from achievement, but from a lifetime of being watched, of being adorned, of being envied. She was the wife of Julian Thorne, the real estate titan, and tonight she was the queen of this glass and steel kingdom. Every soul in this hall knew her, feared her, or wanted to be her. Her gaze, however, was a laser beam fixed on a figure the room had collectively ignored until this very moment. A woman in cobalt blue. The blue wasn't loud. It wasn't the electric blue of a nightclub or the royal blue of a coronation. It was the deep, abyssal blue of the midnight ocean. A color that held its own light, absorbing the room's golden glare and glowing with a quiet, defiant energy. Her dress was a masterpiece of understatement, tailored with architectural precision to move without a whisper. Its power was in its form, its simplicity. No diamond necklace screamed for attention at her throat. No glitter or sequins betrayed her purpose. In a room where everyone was shouting their worth, her presence alone was the statement, as steady and self-contained as a lone flame that refuses to flicker in a storm. She moved with a measured, unhurried pace, her posture a study in unbroken lines, as if the polished marble floor itself recalibrated its level to accommodate her steps. Her hair was swept back in a severe, elegant chignon that left her face completely open, a testament to a woman with nothing to hide and absolutely nothing to prove. In this churning sea of performative noise, she was a column of composed silence, and that, it seemed, was the greatest provocation of all to the woman in red. "Are you fucking kidding me?" Isabella Thorne scoffed, her voice now a theatrical drawl, amplified by the hall's acoustics, designed for a woman who never had to ask for the room's attention. "We are inaugurating a monument to human ambition, a skyscraper that cost more than the GDP of a small nation, and someone dressed like a goddamn blueberry dares to just walk in?" A nervous ripple of murmurs spread through the guests. A few sycophants chuckled, a desperate, pathetic sound from men and women unwilling to be excluded from Isabella's orbit of power. Phones, thin as wafers and glowing with futuristic light, rose from behind champagne glasses, their lenses discreetly capturing the unfolding drama. Near the bar, a young journalist, Kalen Vance, whispered into his comlink, his live feed already streaming to 1,000 followers. "She doesn't look out of place," he muttered, his voice a mix of confusion and awe. "She looks like she owns the place." But Isabella wasn't finished. She was an artist, and public humiliation was her medium. She tilted her champagne flute, the bubbles catching the light, savoring the exquisite cruelty in her tone. "Cobalt blue," she mused, circling the woman like a shark. "How bold. How fitting, I suppose, if you were a porta-potty at a construction site." A small, tight circle of guests near her finally broke, stifling their laughter behind manicured hands. Their smiles were sharpened by a collective, delicious embarrassment. The insult, now free, echoed off the marble and glass, a ricocheting bullet of contempt. The woman in blue did not react. Not a blink, not a twitch of a muscle, not a single breath wasted on a response. Her stillness wasn't the passivity of submission. It was the stillness of immense weight. It was the kind of gravity that pulled the very air in the room tighter, that forced people to lean in and pay attention without understanding why. She had heard words like these before. They were the same words, just dressed in different clothes. She'd heard them in dusty classrooms in her youth, whispered by girls whose futures were already written for them. She'd heard them in sterile, male-dominated boardrooms, spoken by men who saw her ambition as a defect. She'd heard them at charity dinners just like this one, in the dismissive glances and the introductions that skipped right over her name. Tonight, the same old poison was simply served in a designer silk dress with a champagne chaser. But she remained rooted, a silent monolith against the storm. The silence stretching out from her became a physical presence, a pressure that was rapidly becoming unbearable for everyone else. Before we continue, before this powder keg explodes, I have to ask, where are you joining us from tonight? Drop your city, your country, your corner of the world in the comments below. And if you believe that dignity is the only armor that truly matters, smash that like button and subscribe to this channel. These stories are a reminder that the world can be changed, and we're damn glad you're here to witness it. Now, back to her, back to the woman in cobalt blue. She didn't need to strike back with words. Her composure was the strike. Her restraint was the gathering storm. And though no one in this room of titans and heirs knew her name yet, every single one of them could feel it in their bones. This was not the simple, fleeting humiliation of a stranger. This was the prelude to a reckoning. The ghost of the crowd's laughter still lingered in the air, but the woman in blue did not break her stride. Her heels, elegant but practical, met the marble with a quiet, rhythmic cadence that was neither hurried nor hesitant. She moved as if she had walked through 1,000 rooms exactly like this one, yet she carried the unmistakable air of someone who had zero interest in being noticed by any of them. She had arrived without the usual fanfare, without a frantic assistant trailing in her wake, without a stylist fussing over the drape of her dress, without the orbiting sycophants that were the telltale sign of new money. No screaming designer logos announced her financial worth. No blinding jewelry flashed like a billboard of her husband's wealth. In a crowd where every single guest was desperately competing to shimmer and shine, she had chosen to stand like a mountain stone, unpolished, unadorned, and absolutely undeniable. Her invitation, a thick card of pressed fiber embossed with the golden seal of the Apex Tower Development Group, was still folded neatly in her hand. By all rights, that seal was a key capable of opening any door in the city of Neo-Viridia. But when Isabella Thorne, the Mogul's wife, sneered from her self-appointed throne, even that golden seal seemed to vanish into thin air, invisible to the ravenous eyes of the elite. The crowd itself was a living gallery of calculated excess, tuxedos woven in the last remaining ateliers of Milan, gowns custom-dyed to match the effervescence of vintage champagne, shoes that cost more than a year's rent in the sprawling urban sectors below the floating penthouses. The conversations were a rehearsed ballet of numbers, profits, acquisitions, leveraged buyouts, interstellar mineral rights, inheritances. Every gesture was a performance, every smile a negotiation. And then there was her. The cobalt blue dress did not compete with their brilliance. It simply claimed its own space. She had chosen the color with meticulous care. Not black, which would have allowed her to blend into the shadows. Not gold, which would have been a desperate plea for their approval. Cobalt blue, the color of the deep sea, of twilight, of fire burning at its absolute hottest. A color that dared to say, I am not here to fade into your perfectly curated background. But to Isabella Thorne, that silent declaration was a personal insult, an intolerable act of defiance. From her vantage point at the magnetic center of the hall, she looked down on the woman in blue as if she were a glitch in the flawless photograph of her family's legacy. To her, the Apex Tower's opening ceremony was not a party. It was the coronation of the Thorn Empire, and no empire, however new, tolerates an intruder in the throne room. She gestured again to the 2 security guards, her voice louder now, laced with irritation. "Check her credentials. Do it quickly." The guards, both ex-military men with physiques like reinforced concrete, hesitated. It wasn't because they doubted Isabella's authority. It was because of the unnerving calm in the woman's eyes. She didn't fidget. She didn't offer an explanation. She didn't look afraid. She simply extended the sealed envelope forward, her hand as steady as a surgeon's, with an air that said, "Everything you need to know is right here, and still, you will choose to question me." The silence in the room pressed tighter, becoming a physical weight on everyone's shoulders. Guests craned their necks, their curiosity now fully aroused. Phones captured the frozen tableau, the crimson dress versus the cobalt blue, raw accusation versus unshakable composure. The woman in blue allowed herself one slow, deliberate breath. She had walked into hundreds, if not thousands, of rooms just like this one. Rooms where her very presence was measured against the color of her skin before her words could ever be heard. Rooms where she had to prove, again and again and again, that her place at the table was not borrowed, not stolen, and certainly not begged for. And tonight, she decided, she would let them believe whatever they wished. Because she knew a secret so profound and so powerful that it made this entire glittering spectacle feel like a child's play. This hall, this tower, this entire billion-dollar empire, none of it, not a single rivet or pane of glass, could exist without her. But for now, she remained silent, letting the weight of their collective prejudice build higher and higher, brick upon ignorant brick, a skyscraper of sheer arrogance just waiting for the perfect moment to come crashing down. The embossed envelope was still held in her outstretched hand, thick, undeniable, a physical manifestation of her right to be there. It should have been enough to quell the whispers, to silence the doubt. But Isabella Thorne wasn't interested in proof. She was interested in performance. She craved a spectacle, and she had just found her leading lady. She began to circle the woman in blue, a predator sizing up her prey. Her crimson dress flashed and swirled under the chandeliers like a living flame. With every deliberate step, she raised her voice just enough for the nearest concentric circle of guests to catch her words. And once those words were heard, they spread through the crowd like a toxic perfume, sweet and intoxicating for some, suffocating and poisonous for others. "Tell me," she purred, gesturing theatrically with her champagne flute, "who let her in?" A few nervous chuckles bubbled up from the crowd, desperate to please. A man in a velvet jacket, whose family had been losing money for 3 generations, leaned toward his companion and muttered, "Probably some social climber with a borrowed pass. Got lucky." His date, wearing a dress that cost more than his car, laughed too loudly, eager to align herself with the power, with the cruelty, with Isabella. Isabella's smirk widened. She was feeding on their complicity. "I mean, really," she continued, her tone rising as if she were now addressing the entire hall from a stage. "A skyscraper of this scale, of this grandeur, this future-defining symbol of our great city. And someone dressed like that believes she belongs here?" The laughter sharpened this time, no longer muffled by politeness. Guests turned openly, their faces a mixture of emotions, some nakedly cruel, some morbidly curious, all of them caught in the powerful gravity of a public humiliation. A server, passing by with a tray of hors d'oeuvres, slowed his pace, his eyes wide, unsure whether he should keep walking into the line of fire or simply vanish behind the heavy velvet curtains. The woman in cobalt blue remained utterly still, her breath calm, her gaze unwavering. But Isabella wasn't finished. She was building to a crescendo. She leaned closer, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper that was somehow louder than a shout, her words slicing through the air like blades disguised as silk. "Do you even know where you are, sweetheart? This isn't a charity banquet for the underprivileged. This isn't a suburban mall opening. This is history being written. And you? You're just a distraction, a smudge, an unfortunate splash of blue fabric." A collective ripple of gasps mixed with the fresh wave of laughter. This was more direct, more personal, more brutal than before. Some guests exchanged uneasy glances, a flicker of doubt in their eyes. A few even shifted their weight, a subtle physical manifestation of the question forming in their minds. Should they stand with the predator or the prey? Isabella, however, sensed no danger. She was drunk on her own power, mistaking the crowd's captivated silence for unwavering support. She raised her glass high, her grin wide and triumphant, and declared, her voice ringing with finality, "Security